Former Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holtzclaw reacting to his conviction. This is back in 2015, ultimately sentenced to more than 200 years in prison.
Holtzclaw convicted after 13 women accused him of rape and sexual assault. Holtzclaw says he's innocent.
Hugs escalated to groping, trapping me places and forcing me into positions where he would press his body into mine, forcing me to dance with him.
Mr. Holtzclaw, this jury finds you guilty of the various counts. You will be remanded to the custody of the Oklahoma County Sheriff for formal sentencing set January 21st, 2016 at 10 o'clock a.m.
This is David Oliver, a former police chief of Brimfield Township. He is facing 4 misdemeanor charges, namely unlawful restraint, attempted theft, simple assault, and unauthorized use of property. David gained some attention on Facebook for his straightforward and humorous remarks about the criminals he refers to as mopes. However, his luck took a turn for the worse when the judge overseeing his case labeled him a mope during his sentencing, serving him a taste of his own medicine.
Become the mope that you wrote about in your book.
David Oliver showed clear signs of resistance as he entered a plea of no contest to multiple charges, which included attempted theft while holding office and sexual assault. The allegations of sexual harassment were made by Crystal Casterline, a female officer who accused him of misconduct.
That Crystal punched me as much as I punched her.
During the court proceedings, Crystal Casterline, a former officer who served under David Oliver, bravely came forward and informed the judge that it was David Oliver himself who had subjected her to harassment. She expressed her dissatisfaction with the proposed plea agreement, stating that it was not sufficient as a form of punishment for his actions.
Runner, I loved life. I snuggled my little girls constantly, and I was naive. I never understood domestic violence, how it gets that far.
Oliver's anger became apparent as he heard Casterline mention certain details.
Hugs escalated to groping, trapping me places and forcing me into positions where he would press his body into mine, forcing me to dance with him.
Despite his disagreement with numerous allegations, Oliver chose to plead guilty to all charges in order to put the past behind him and move on with his life. As a result, he received a sentence of 2 years of probation and was ordered to provide restitution. Furthermore, he was permanently barred from serving as a police officer ever again. This is Charlie Reeder, the ex-sheriff of Pike County. He is facing several serious charges, including 2 counts of theft in office and tampering with evidence. In 2019, he was accused of diverting money obtained from drug seizures to fuel his gambling addiction, which he had been struggling with for a significant period of time. It is alleged that he misappropriated an amount of approximately $5,000. In a feeble effort to maintain his reputation, Reeder claimed in court that he had taken the money from drug investigations and used it to benefit the community. However, it was a highly questionable statement, as it was difficult to believe his justification. Just before his sentencing, Reeder delivered an emotional speech, tears streaming down his face, pleading with the judge to spare him from a prison sentence.
I stand here before you today to take accountability for my actions. As a sheriff of Ohio, I shed, I shed bad light on the office of sheriff.
Following the lengthy and emotionally charged speech, characterized by tears, a quivering voice, and various tactics employed to sway the judge's decision, the judge had only one question to pose.
The denominations did not match what was taken at the crime scene or from those individuals. I guess, why did you take the money?
As part of the plea agreement, Reeder has been barred from holding any public office in Ohio. Subsequently, the judge handed down a sentence of 6.5 years. However, since the charges will be served concurrently, Reeder is expected to serve 3 years in prison.
Now at 5:30, it was sentencing day for a police officer who was convicted of attacking a male nurse at Jackson Memorial Hospital. That attack happened back in May of last year. That officer was fired for that incident. He had been with the Miami Police Force for more than 20 years.
And now he has to pay the price for slamming the nurse to the ground.
This is Lester Bonenblust, a 51-year-old individual who has been found guilty of assaulting and forcefully throwing a male nurse to the ground at Jackson Memorial Hospital. Bonenblust faced charges of battery against a person aged 65 years or older and false imprisonment. According to the arrest report, the altercation occurred when Bonenblust's niece, who was dealing with mental health issues, was discharged from the hospital. The next day, her father brought her back, seeking readmission. However, medical professionals determined that she did not meet the criteria for readmission and advised her father to schedule a follow-up appointment. In response, the father called upon his brother, Bonenblust, who was also a fellow officer. Upon their arrival at the hospital, the nurse informed Bonenblust that he could not discuss the patient's situation in an area where other patients were present. He guided Bonenblust to a more secluded area to address the matter privately. It was at this point that Bonenblust forcefully grabbed the nurse by his jacket and violently threw him to the floor. Police reports indicate that video evidence captured Bonenblust grabbing the nurse from behind, leading the nurse to retaliate and demand that he remove his hands. Following this incident, Bonenblust was discharged from the police force, having served for 20 years.
One, battery on a person 65 years of age or older, and guilty on one count of false imprisonment.
This is the account given by James Nicholson, the 66-year-old nurse who experienced the traumatic incident. Nicholson, who is now retired due to a knee injury, shared his perspective on the event.
The point where I was yelling at the top of my lungs, help, help. What happened to me that day should not happen to anybody.
On Friday, Bonenblust's family members were overcome with emotion as Judge Marissa Tinkler Mendez of Miami-Dade County announced his sentence. Bonenblust received a 45-day jail term, followed by 3 years of probation upon his release. In addition, he is required to complete 100 hours of community service. This is Lisette Gonzalez, a 46-year-old woman who recently underwent a one-day trial in Seminole County Court located in Sanford, Florida. The trial has concluded, and Lisette was facing charges of driving under the influence, as accused by Officer Wagner. The jury has reached a verdict, finding her guilty. However, just before the final decision is made, Lisette's attorney makes a final plea to the judge. The attorney brings to the court's attention the fact that Lisette was never subjected to a breathalyzer or blood test, despite the arresting officer's claim that she tested above the legal limit.
Respectfully ask that this court grant the judgment notwithstanding the verdict.
In an unusual courtroom occurrence, the attorney takes the unprecedented step of requesting the judge to overturn the jury's verdict and declare the defendant innocent. Tension builds as the judge engages in a heated exchange with the prosecutor during their conversation.
Wait a minute. Did you hear the uncontroverted testimony of this officer?
Your Honor.
Then I want you taking him up on perjury.
Your Honor.
Will you take him up for perjury?
He admitted it was a mistake, Your Honor.
No, but he lied. He lied on a sworn
Absolutely
citation.
not, Your Honor, and that is not true.
I'm dismissing. I am dismissing this charge.
In a surprising twist, the judge decides to dismiss the charge against the defendant and grants them a JOA, which stands for Joint Operating Agreement. However, the judge's actions don't end there. There is more to come.
I consider what Officer Wagner testified to and how many times he basically tripped over himself just to arrest this lady with no real probable cause. You're done. Motion, the JOA is granted.
And you're not going to provide a written order on that?
Nope. Do you want to appeal me? Appeal me.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Lisette Gonzalez, the defendant, walks out of the courtroom without any charges against her. She is now free from legal obligations and can move on with her life.
Tears in court during sentencing for the former police officer who shot and killed Corey Jones.
This is Numan Raja, a police officer who has been found guilty on 2 charges: manslaughter by culpable negligence and attempted first-degree murder with a firearm. Raja was arrested in connection with the fatal shooting of Corey Jones, a 31-year-old musician and housing inspector. Jones was waiting for assistance on a highway after his car had broken down. The tragic incident garnered significant media coverage due to its association with a series of similar cases involving the killings of black men by law enforcement officers. Friends and family members of the beloved Corey Jones shared heartfelt messages about him and expressed their opposition to the recent instances of brutality faced by their community.
This should have never happened.
My uncle should still be with us alive.
The prosecutors presented evidence showing that on August 18, 2015, Mr. Raja, who was on duty but dressed in plain clothes, encountered a vehicle that he believed to be abandoned on the side of the road at around 3:15 a.m. He approached the vehicle and had a brief interaction with the occupant, Mr. Jones, who was actually seeking roadside assistance. It was later revealed that Mr. Jones had a legally obtained handgun with him. Mr. Raja claimed that Mr. Jones pointed the gun at him, but according to the prosecution, Mr. Raja fired his weapon even as Mr. Jones was attempting to flee. Within a matter of moments after the initial encounter, Mr. Raja discharged 6 shots, 3 of which struck Mr. Jones, ultimately resulting in his death. After hearing the case, the judge delivered a statement and subsequently sentenced Mr. Raja to 25 years for each of the 2 charges. The sentences were to be served concurrently, meaning Mr. Raja would serve both at the same time. This is Michael Dotro, a former police officer from Edison who carried out a series of vengeful plots against fellow officers whom he believed had crossed him during his time on the force. Eventually, he was arrested for intentionally setting fire to his supervisor's residence. Dotro was scheduled to face multiple charges during his arraignment, including attempted murder, aggravated arson, official misconduct, conspiracy to tamper with a witness, and conspiracy to retaliate. The attempted murder and arson charges stemmed from an incident on May 23, 2013, when Dotro used 2 containers filled with gasoline to ignite his supervisor's home. At the time of the fire, the supervisor, along with his wife, 2 children, and 92-year-old mother, were present in the house. Although the property suffered significant damage, fortunately, no injuries were reported. Throughout the nearly hour-long trial, Dotro remained completely silent while the judge shared his thoughts on the matter.
Because of what this individual has done, because of him and people like him, victims are afraid to come forward to be part of the criminal justice system.
In addition to the attempted murder and arson charges, Michael Dotro has faced other legal troubles in recent years. He was involved in an official misconduct case where he was accused of accessing police records and sharing information with his wife regarding a tire slashing incident involving a woman he was allegedly in a relationship with. Dotro also pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges, admitting that he sought revenge against a North Brunswick police officer who had issued a drunk driving ticket to someone else. These actions demonstrate that Dotro is not someone who relies on divine justice for vengeance. He takes matters into his own hands.
But what he's really done, and what we're going to be left with after he's walking out the door, to spend the next third of his life in prison.
Dotro was sentenced to 20 years for attempted murder, 10 years for aggravated arson, 10 years for official misconduct, 5 years for conspiracy to tamper with a witness, and 18 months for conspiracy to retaliate. It's important to note that all of these prison terms will be served simultaneously, meaning that he will serve the longest sentence, which is 20 years, and the other sentences will be served alongside it.
I haven't been away from my kids for more than a day, and since being incarcerated, I miss Christmas, I miss my little Sabrina's birthday, I miss my Kylie at Rose riding bicycle, which I was practicing.
This is Sean Corder, a 35-year-old police officer from the Bloomfield Police Department, who is facing several charges including conspiracy to commit official misconduct, tampering with public records, falsifying public records, and false swearing. On June 7, 2012, Corder responded to a call at Marcus Jeter's residence after an argument between Jeter and his girlfriend. Jeter voluntarily left the premises, but Corder pursued him onto the Garden State Parkway and initiated a traffic stop. Despite Corder's attempts to have Jeter exit his vehicle, Jeter refused, expressing fear for his safety. After calling for backup, Officer Corder's colleagues arrived at the scene, and unfortunately, their vehicle collided with the front of Jeter's car. In the midst of the situation, Corder proceeded to break the window of Jeter's car and, with assistance from his backup, forcibly removed Jeter from the vehicle. Following the incident, the officers involved filed police reports alleging that Jeter had attempted to seize Corder's firearm and had also assaulted one of the backup officers. Based on these reports, Jeter was charged with eluding, resisting arrest, aggravated assault, and attempting to disarm a police officer. After uncovering new evidence, the prosecutor decided to drop all charges against Marcus Jeter. Furthermore, an investigation was initiated into the actions of the involved officers, which led to the grand jury indicting them. Before his sentencing, Officer Courter addressed the judge in the presence of the entire Essex County Courthouse, expressing his thoughts or statements.
I love my children more than anything in the world, and I know they need me. I don't want them to have to suffer, switch schools, lose friends, lose the house that they're raised in.
Marcus Jeter, the victim in this case, was present in the courthouse and shared his thoughts and perspective on Sean Courter and the entire ordeal.
To say that I resisted. He had a choice. I'm not saying that messes his character up. I'm not saying that he's not a good guy. I'm just saying that in a situation like this where he has an obligation, a moral obligation to tell the truth, he chose not to.
After being found guilty of official misconduct and tampering with records, Sean Courter, the former Bloomfield police officer, received a sentence of 5 years in state prison from Essex County Superior Court Judge Michael Raven.
Former Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holtzclaw reacting to his conviction, this is back in 2015, ultimately sentenced to more than 200 years in.
This is Daniel Holtzclaw, a former police officer with the Oklahoma City Police Department. He is facing numerous charges, including rape, sexual battery, forcible oral sodomy, and other sexual offenses. Holtzclaw has been accused of sexually assaulting multiple women of African American descent between December 2013 and June 2014. He specifically targeted women from a poorer area of the city with a predominantly black population. According to investigators, Holtzclaw selectively chose his victims by running background checks on women with outstanding warrants, pending parking tickets, or previous criminal records. He exploited this information to target them for his sexual assaults. Holtzclaw remained on paid leave until he was formally charged in August 2014. However, he was subsequently terminated from the Oklahoma City Police Department in January 2015. His trial commenced on November 2nd, 2015.
Mr. Holtzclaw, this jury finds you guilty of the various counts. You will be remanded to the custody of the Oklahoma County Sheriff for formal sentencing set January 21st, 2016 at 10 o'clock a.m.
Holtzclaw maintained his innocence and entered a plea of not guilty for all the charges against him. However, on December 10th, 2015, he was ultimately found guilty of 18 of the charges. The jury recommended an astonishing prison sentence of 263 years for him. Holtzclaw's defense attorney, claiming that crucial evidence had been withheld, requested a new trial. However, the judge promptly denied the request. This is Zachary Wester, a 30-year-old former deputy who worked in North Florida. He has been found guilty of a range of charges, which include the disturbing act of planting drugs on innocent drivers. Wester faced approximately 67 counts, including racketeering, official gross misconduct, false imprisonment, and possession of controlled substances. His crimes unfolded during routine traffic stops that initially began with minor infractions. However, these encounters took a grave turn as innocent individuals were wrongfully implicated in fabricated drug charges, such as possession of methamphetamine. Wester himself was responsible for planting the drugs. The victims of his actions experienced devastating consequences, with their lives being upended as a result. One such victim is Teresa Odom.
I wish you no ill will, and you'll never know what you've done to me until you have children of your own.
During the trial, the prosecution utilized Webster's own body camera footage, as well as additional evidence to build a case against him. This evidence included the discovery of a hidden supply of pre-prepared evidence in the trunk of his patrol car, ready to be planted. The prosecution put forth the argument that Webster, driven by ambition, desired to advance his career within the police department and sought a position in the narcotics division. However, Webster adamantly testified in court, vehemently denying any involvement in planting drugs in the vehicles of the victims. Despite the prosecution's claims, he maintained his innocence throughout the trial.
Ever anything other than that bag same bag being palmed in your hand that you later put in her purse and acted like you found out of that purse.
Okay, so what you just presented to this jury is absolutely absurd and not factual at all.
Wester received a prison sentence of 12 years and 6 months, having already spent the previous 58 days in custody at the Jackson County Jail following his guilty verdict. That period will be credited towards his overall sentence. He will now be transferred to a state prison to serve the remaining duration of his term.